Glad you could join us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. While efforts to achieve the goals outlined in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement could drive positive changes following nearly a decade of economic growth across Africa, climate change threatens to derail these gains. And this places Africa at a tipping point. The United Nations Security Council devoted its session on Friday, the 25th of January, to raising alarm bells over climate change and emphasizing how the issue poses a threat to global peace and stability. We open Earthfile today with the new challenges climate change presents and, of course, the way forward. Do stay with us. Chad-China Friendship Hospital is a nutrition center in N'Djamena where 16,000 children suffering from malnutrition are admitted every year. This year, the center has recorded what experts described as a worrisome increase in admissions. In August 2018, the number of children suffering from severe acute malnutrition increased by 57% compared to the same period in 2017.
A hospital that has just increased the number of beds from 85 to over 500, which is a major boost for primary health care, but also for helping particularly mothers and their children on the issue of malnutrition. We spent this morning at a special center here where mothers can come with their children, have them examined and assessed, be given advice on how to deal with malnutrition, and hopefully leave the hospital in a better position to avert something that is perfectly avoidable if you have both the information, the awareness and the knowledge of how to do it. Malnutrition is something that we can beat.
The Lake Chad region is facing one of the most severe humanitarian crises in the world today. About 7.7 million people are in need of assistance, and the worst affected states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe alone in the northeastern part of Nigeria. The crisis in Nigeria's northeast has spilled over into the Lake Chad region over the past few years. Food security and nutrition situation remains extremely fragile across the region, particularly given the high levels of AIDS dependency, compounded by the lack of access or other livelihood opportunities. Up to 3 million people are estimated to suffer from critical food insecurity. In recent years, extensive droughts in sub-Saharan Africa have led to famines. Extensive flooding in Southeast Asia has caused widespread loss of crops and livestock. These two extremes, experts say, are hallmarks of climate change, and they are set to become even more severe in the years ahead, leading to greater food insecurity as the global population gets larger.
But climate impact is real. 22 to 23 million people alone were impacted and forcibly displaced because of change in climate. Because every 5 seconds, a child is dying from starvation. And when there's $300 trillion worth of wealth in the world today, that's unacceptable and it's inexcusable.
61.7 million people were affected by natural disasters last year, losing their jobs, being displaced and injured. And 10,373 people lost their lives, most of them due to earthquakes and tsunamis. A significant decrease from the average of 77,144 deaths recorded between 2000 and 2017. But the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction said that more natural disasters are to be expected in 2019 after a low-impact year in 2018.
Mega disasters, which we consider 5,000 dead or more, there were none in 2018. There were none. There were no mega disasters. So that makes the year a low impact year. Now, I would like to hasten to point out that a low impact year doesn't really mean that the next year is going to be a low impact year. We think 2019, I'll go into a little bit on what we see in the crystal ball, what we see forthcoming. 2019 may actually, for many reasons, which we'll look at, may actually be a much more catastrophic year than 2018 has been. This has been an extremely worrisome phenomena in the last couple of years. The Attica fires in Greece It killed 126 people, which for Europe, I mean, one has to look at it in relative terms. 126 people dead in an event in Europe, in Western Europe, in the European Union, is in fact a very, very large number of people.
The United Nations warns on the severe impact of El Nino in 2019 that will intensify drought in South America and South Africa.
First of all, we think that in 2019, the potential for El Nino impact in extreme events is going to be quite serious. We have not had it in the last 2 or 3 years, it's true, but I think this is going to build up, and 2019 is foreseen as a major El Nino year, and we may see very serious and severe impact. The risk of drought in Southern Africa and in Central America is likely to intensify. And this will mean in Southern Africa it's going to be quite spectacular, also because of the political turmoil in that region.
The UN Special Representatives of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction called on leaders to start adapting to climate change.
Of course, mitigation, we need to do it in order to have a safe and livable planet in decades to come. But I would like to really advocate here that climate change adaptation has to stop being the poor cousin of mitigation. Because even if we work on mitigation, the climate change is impacting on us on a daily basis, as you can see in these disasters.
As climate change is increasingly recognized as a threat multiplier by scientists, political representatives, and civil society across the world, the United Nations Security Council held an open debate recently to discuss its concrete impact on peace and security and focus on tangible ways to diminish the effect of global warming.
The risks associated with climate-related disasters do not represent a scenario of some distant future. They are already a reality for millions of people around the globe, and they are not going away. A report released by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change last October predicted more heat waves, heavier rain events, higher sea levels, and more severe damage to agriculture. These trends represent a security risk for the entire world. However, their consequences are felt most strongly in regions that are already vulnerable, where climate change and extreme weather compound existing grievances and threats.
The meeting took place almost 2 months after 197 parties to the United Nations Climate Change Convention agreed to a concrete way forward on implementing the 2015 Paris Agreement, which aims to keep global warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels, and ahead of the United Nations Secretary General's Climate Summit, which will hold on the 23rd of September 2019. Whether climate change is an issue that should be examined by the United Nations Peace and Security Body to begin with has been the subject of controversy. Some member states believe that this is stepping on the toes of other United Nations entities, specifically mandated with taking a lead on social and economic development or environmental protection. The first ever meeting of the Security Council examining the linkages between climate change and insecurity happened in April 2007. Since then, the UN body has increasingly taken steps that effectively acknowledge that the two issues are related. In July 2011, another open debate on the matter was held. In March 2017, Resolution 2349 was adopted, highlighting the need to address climate-related risks in order to tackle the conflict in the Lake Chad Basin. And in July 2018, a debate was held on understanding and addressing climate-related security risks.
For the Security Council, this is not news. In recent months, the Council has recognized the adverse effects of climate change, among other factors, on the stability of Mali, Somalia, West Africa and the Sahel, Central Africa and the Sudan. The Secretary General, for his part, has articulated a broad vision for prevention and made it a priority to improve our ability to address wider stresses and shocks that can exacerbate crises and lead to violent conflict.
In a sign of how important the discussion is to many countries, the debate was attended by over 70 member states and included statements in the Council chamber from a dozen ministers, including Kuwait, Belgium, Indonesia, Germany, and Poland.
Climate change is real. It is having a global impact. And it is increasingly becoming a threat to international peace and security. This is why the debate about the policy consequences of climate change belongs here, in the Security Council. It must become routine for us to take the link between climate and security into account in all conflict situations. We should focus on three aspects. First, all United Nations member states need access to reliable and comprehensive information. This is why systematic reporting by the Secretary General on the security-related impacts of climate change is so important. Second, the Security Council needs sound risk analysis and forecasts with clear recommendations for action. Our Swedish friends have strengthened the capacities of the UN system to this end, and we want to continue along this path. And third, we must work even harder to translate our knowledge about climate change into tangible policy in the mandates of the United Nations missions and, above all, in the work of the United Nations in the field.
Climate change is destroying our tiny island country for years. It is eroding our beaches, killing the coral reefs protecting our islands, contaminating our fresh water with seawater, and we are losing our fish stock. But most importantly, climate change is going to take our home away from us.
The administrator of the United Nations Development Programme also delivered remarks by telephone. An environmentalist by training, he said that climate change is not only affecting the atmosphere, but also the biosphere, and that the world is not keeping up with the challenge. The UNDP administrator called on the Security Council to recognize the science and empirical evidence, leverage all possible measures that can slow global warming, and invest in climate adaptation and risk reduction for the millions of people already suffering from the effect of climate change.
And it is telling that as this week the World Economic Forum published its Global Disaster Risk Report, it identified the impact of extreme weather events and failure to implement climate change mitigation adaptation measures as the two top global risks that the world now sees, well ahead of cybersecurity, data theft, and other such phenomena that pose risks to the global economy and international security. As you all know, climate change is a risk multiplier. It aggravates already fragile situations, including in humanitarian contexts where communities have limited capacity to cope with additional shocks.
For the first time in history, the World Meteorological Organization was invited to brief the members of the Security Council on climate and extreme weather issues.
Climate change, as already mentioned, has a multitude of security impacts, rolling back the gains in nutrition and access to food, heightening the risk of wildfires and exacerbating air quality challenges, increasing the potential for water conflict, leading to more internal displacement and migration. It is increasingly regarded as a national security threat.
Experts believe climate change, if left unchecked, will erode long-term opportunities for human development, undermining human productivity and capability. They have the potential to create new famines and undermine global efforts to achieve no hunger and no poverty by 2030.